Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS Shout Out Show. Hope you're having a fabulous Tuesday. I almost said I can't believe we're at Tuesday already, but that would be overshadowed by the fact I can't believe we're at the end of the month already. We are moving through the end of October into daylight savings time, so we have a lot of things to really shake off here moving forward. I want to give some shout outs for some really good encouraging comments that I got over some of the past shows. People who resonated with the Why I Stand with Dave Chappelle show. Thank you for giving me a call, reaching out. This continues to be an ever evolving situation back from where we stood and we did that broadcast. As well, just want to give a shout out to some of our frontline workers. We have not talked about some of our frontline workers who continue to service people in the wake of this COVID pandemic, make sure that people are doing well. I'm going to give a shout out to some of the healthcare facilities who are out there quietly supplying PPE equipment and things like that to make sure that people are okay. So aside from that, brothers and sisters, I had a really good conversation some weeks ago with a young man. Well, he wasn't a young man. He was younger than me, so I guess that makes him a younger man. Really talking about the whole idea of faith. Now, let me preface this by saying that the man I talked about, he was a man who was homeless at this point in time. So his understanding of if he felt like he was isolated, if he was abandoned, it would be totally justified. But what we had in terms of a conversation was what we're going to talk about today was really, the ability, the aptitude, the capacity of faith-based foundations to really go out and help people these days. We've talked a lot about Republicans and the Trumpers and the MAGA and all that type of stuff, but it really has come down to where in society, particularly now, where do they fit in terms of our faith institutions and their ability to effectively compel people to do things like social justice, compel things, people and policies. These were for so many years the spiritual contention. We used to have things like the moral right back in the day, and the moral right, while we may not agree with them, they still had some aspect of course, being moral, meaning that they would call out their own. So, in having this conversation with this person, this gentleman, his name was Neri, and Brother Neri pointed out that he, despite his situation, still had expectations, and he still had, expectations, but I want to say he held out for the fact that despite how crazy things were going, that there was a space for our churches and our mosques and our synagogues to really get involved in helping the communities that they claim, in his position, that they claim to serve, that they claim to frame in terms of the religious doctrine, the specific aspects of pedagogy. The truth is, how do we not serve the poor? But really, as he was saying, Brother Neri said, how do we keep them from being poor in the first place? Okay, so we're going to throw that out, and we're going to talk about some of the dilemmas that our faith-based organizations are having today. Because some of the things you really have to look at now, and Brother Neri, he explained this in a very succinct way, so I hope I'm not bastardizing him. But what he was saying was the nature and the reach of faith institutions has now become germane to whether people see them as necessary or vital. We'll be back with the Shout Out Show talking about the dilemmas of faith-based communities here on the Shout Out Show. I'm Preacher Moss. Let's get it rolling. back. Before we get into today's subject matter, I want to make sure that I give a shout out to my friend, brother Jazz, who's doing great work over at Convenience Urgent Care. He's donated timelessly in terms of masks, PPE equipment. And if you are in the city of Houston or in the suburbs of Houston, check out Convenience Urgent Care on Parker Road and Cypress, and also in Pasadena, Texas. Now, brothers and sisters, before we get started, I want to make sure that I properly frame what it is we're about to talk about today. This is not an argument against religion. Not at all. This is not a takedown of the ability and the responsibility of religious institutions. It is not that. It is an argument and a discussion more so about how we align core beliefs and core values to address present day problems. How do we take our core values and our religious alignment with our doctrine and our scholarship and our holy books and turn it to a situation that can positively affect that situation? All right. Before we do that, I want to make sure I give some shout outs. If you're coming on the shout out show for the first time, thank you so much for coming. Let me tell you how this works. First of all, we're glad that you came to the show. We appreciate that. Second of all, you know what? To be a part of the shout out show is very informal. We just ask that when you come on, you have some ideas or you share who you are so that we can properly give you a shout out. Meaning that we acknowledge your presence, we acknowledge your existence, we acknowledge that you are going through a human experience. That is what the shout out show essentially is. And jump in. Now, I'm going to say this. If you come one time, we appreciate it. If you come two times, we appreciate it. If you come three times, you are officially part of the Shout Out Show family. So let me show you how that works. Let me welcome our Shout Out Show family. So tell me who we have. We have Sister Ree. Sister Ree is a veteran, a Hall of Famer on the Shout Out Show. Sister Ree, hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for attending. As always, peace and blessing to you, your family, your husband, and your in-laws, and of course, your son, the jewel of your life. Make sure that you tell them that we said, have a blessed day and we're thinking about them. Sister Ree is also she's our show dietitian, if you will. And she always has been supportive of the Shout Out Show. So I'm going to make sure that you get your shine right now. Next up, Mary Moss. This is a very, very suspicious character who bears my last name. I'm kidding. You call her Mary Moss, I call her Mama Son, who is, without doubt, really one of my inspirations in terms of creativity. My father being the other one, Clifford Moss Jr. It's interesting and it's a blessing that you can have your parents engage on concepts and content that you bring to them and you bring to everybody else and have that adult conversation. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree, but it doesn't supersede the fact that I love the support that I get from my parents and I appreciate it. Mom and son, love you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We will argue about this thing later. Next up, All Talk for Sheep, my main man. We call him Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, always on the show. He was our Canadian ambassador to the show. Let me tell you a little something about All Talk for Sheep. It's interesting when you have people come to the show and they're not from the United States, but he brings a particular type of flavor and support that in his own way and in my own way, I do connect with that whole aspect of across the border. If anybody's been to Canada, whether it be Winnipeg, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, it's a different vibe when you go above there. And I appreciate Brother Altough because he brings that vibe to the show and reminds me in some regards that things are different outside of the United States. And I'm not saying bad or good, just different. And it gives us a little bit more of a flavor and elasticity in some of the topics that we talk about. Shout out to you, Brother Altough. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Appreciate you. Next up, we got Sister Nyma Griffin all the way from the D. How you doing, Sister Nyma? She is putting in that work. Congratulations on your new job, and peace and blessings to you and your family. I appreciate you. Yeah, this is we try to do our background thing. We try and keep our background game tight. This is one of my favorite backgrounds, so appreciate you. Make sure I told everybody, Sister Nyma, that your grandmother is an amazingly dope jazz singer. I think next time I'm going to try and put her stuff up so we can support her on I guess iTunes or whatever it is, Amazon, wherever she can get some credit and get some money for supporting the jazz art and contributing to the jazz art form. Tell her I appreciate her, and big shout out to Grandpa too. Next up, This is Akina Majahid. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Peace and blessings to you and your tribe. Keep continuing to do good things, and good things will come to you. Thank you so much. Next up, Sister Aika. From all the way over, brothers and sisters, all the way over from Indonesia. She checks in, and we appreciate your support. Tuning in early. I think Father just came in a little while ago. Thank you so much for your support, Sister Aika. Not in Jakarta, brothers and sisters, but in Depok. Thank you so much, Sister Aika. Next up, and we got my brother Johnny L. Thomas, better known as JT to me. Thanks so much, brother. And have Brother Jordan check his email in this text. I completed the questionnaire he sent to me. I sent it back just for backup, little brother. I'm going to send it to you just so he has it. He told me he needed it for Wednesday. I wanted to make sure that he had it today because that's what good uncles do. Next up, of course, we can't forget our consultant producer, Sister Satana Whitfield, doing all the things that make the show a success. We appreciate you, Sister Satana. If I didn't say it today and I didn't say it yesterday, I'm going to say it tomorrow and the day afterwards. We appreciate your contributions to the show, especially when you pop on. And Sister Satana, just so you guys know, we'll be popping on the show a little bit more because you know what? I have opinions, but I want to make sure that other people are able to get their opinions. And we're working on the fact that we want to get your opinions, brothers and sisters. Our core group with the Shout Out Show, we want to bring some of you on and talk about some of these topics too, because I'm interested in your perspective. All right. The limits of the faith-based community, brothers and sisters. I have spent quite an amount of time on this. In my master's program, I pursued originally Islamic leadership and Islamic studies. Now, let me explain something to you. One of the reasons, this is being fully transparent, one of the reasons I didn't finish that program of Islamic studies, Islamic leadership is honestly, I didn't really know what it was. That was number one. Number two was it was going to require an extended period of commitment to the Arabic language. And to myself, don't get me wrong. To myself, I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to use it in the capacity of what I've been doing in terms of community work, comedy, etc. It would be something where I put a lot of energy into it. I'm not sure that it would enhance what I was doing other than help me get a degree. Therefore, I switched to Islamic education. And Islamic education is a lot closer to what I've been doing over the years, working with communities, working with youth and things like that. And I have to go back to the conversation I had with Brother Neri. And Brother Neri, while he said, hey, I'm in transition, I'm homeless. He said, though I am homeless, and this was amazing. He said, though I am homeless, I still manage to get to church on Sundays. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, why? He said, because the church has made a declaration, and I have to make sure that they follow through on the declaration. I said, well, now, what are you saying? He said, I said, you're saying that they need to give you food, water, clothing? He said, no. He said, I'm okay at this level where I am right now. He said, I need to know that they're doing it for other people who are worse than me. And at this point in time, brothers and sisters, I stepped back and I'm like, well, what's worse than being homeless? He said, well, I have my wits about me. He said, I have my wits about me and I can still have a conversation. He said, I'm still in my own space, able to work of sound mind and sound body. He said, but in this world of transitional living, homelessness, he said, there are people who don't even understand the realities around them. They just wake up and they go to sleep. He said it is a cloudy existence. And I said, wow. He said the duty that he saw of faith-based communities is that they're supposed to be the beacon in the middle of all those clouds. That they are supposed to be, when there's nothing there, they're supposed to be everything to people who are in need. Now, I heard a quote, and I'm probably going to put it in my Friday reminders. I'm Muslim, guys know that, but I'm gonna put this in my Friday reminders. OG said that the Sirota Mustaqim, the straight path, is the only thing that can wrap around in a circle and still be straight. He said the straight path in and of itself is the only thing that can be a straight path but still be a circle, meaning you can start here and it can lead you back to yourself. Why are we not being able to have people come back to their natural excellence? Why can we not have people come back to their natural selves? We all go through trials and tribulations, brothers and sisters, but it could be that is it the level of trial and tribulation that we're dealing with are so all consuming that we can't care about other people? And if you have a faith-based religion or a faith-based institution that is so engaged, so consumed with the functionality of the church that somehow, like I said, somehow it now affects their outreach. During the pandemic, it was interesting because I saw different types of outreach. I saw massive food giveaways and things like that. And for the first time in my life, literally, I was online with people who were giving out food to the needy, but they were right on the margins of needing that exact same food for themselves. I was one of them. I'm not gonna lie. You don't know the feeling that you're giving away food and you're like, man, I might need one of those bags. And of course, my brothers and sisters was like, go ahead and take a bag. I was like, no, I'm gonna be okay. Because someone, just like Neri said, they might be worse than me. I'm sound of mind and sound of body that can get up and do something. But has it come to the point, especially with today's politics, which is another thing I want to get about, has the political overload that we deal with every day, we talked about the negativity economy yesterday, has it become the thing whereby even faith-based people believe that their faith only works to a certain extent? Could it be that right here, right now, as we speak, there are people who believe, brothers and sisters, that my faith is limited? It's limited to the situations around me, that my faith somehow lacks capacity and lacks focus to deal with problems. Now, I said about the negativity economy yesterday that sometimes producing so much negative content, like I talk about the fact checkers. If you ever want to make a fact checker check, make them continue to check lies. They check for the truth. Then you give them a plethora of lies. Could it be in this situation that all the redundancy, if you will, when I say redundancy, I'm talking about redundancy of policy that doesn't work, redundancy of inhumane actions towards one another, the redundancy of just basic care and human acknowledgement continues to be an issue. And that we produce generations that less and less and less have a connection to faith-based communities. That's the other thing. We are now in a situation where before COVID hit, we had a situation where we were dealing with population issues of people coming into the masjids, coming into the churches. We weren't getting the converts as we were before. And then COVID hit and we were shut down for over a year. And now, brothers and sisters, the one thing that faith-based communities have leaned on is that they're not necessarily perceived as the life core of the community. It used to be no thing to see 3 or 4 churches on the corner, a mosque, maybe a synagogue. But now they're just buildings because people question their functionality. I've been attending mosque for almost 35 years now. Yeah, a little under 35 years. It was always interesting to me that the mosque would stay open 7 days a week, but it'd just be for prayers. And I used to say, it's just for prayers. Then you go to some mosque and you would have people running in and out, and there was life in the masjid. And I thought, you know what, no big problem. We got prayers 5 times a day, and then COVID hit. And what you did was you had to understand that we produced for a year people who had no relationship with the masjid. They had no relationship with prayers in a religious institution. Churches were closed. So the most sacred day, Sunday, was closed. Synagogues did not do the Sabbath. You had this whole thing whereby religiosity was put on hold. My question that I have now is, are we going to be able to return, one, to the core values that we evoke in issues of our creedal statements that make us Muslims, that make us Jews, that make us Christians, that make us Buddhists? Can we regain those creedal statements and at the same time act on them in a way whereby it demonstrates capacity, it demonstrates potential, and it demonstrates relevance to people who are not necessarily estranged from organized religion? I'm talking about the people who are in organized religion who now find themselves estranged, who now find themselves away from the masjid, um, looking at the whole idea of religiosity and organized religion in a different way. Now, we had, brothers and sisters, a whole social movement around George Floyd, and this is the thing that you can't overlook outside of religious function in terms of performing funerals, brothers and sisters, funerals. You can't show me a leader in the whole George Floyd thing at this point in time, a leader of merit that was a religious leader. In some regards, it was a total rebuke of religious leaders as people who presented the moral compass of a social movement. And if you think about that, it's like, well, I said a moral compass. So that's two things. It's the morality, the compass that gives us direction. So now I'm saying we don't have both. We are absent of both. And even more so, brothers and sisters, the whole aspect of religious functionality in terms of interfaith has now become questioned. I've said it before, and I'll say it now. In some aspects of interfaith that we do are very, very empty because it is a group of ideologues in some cases who talk about the difference of a religion, like my religion, don't like my religion, or our differences. Meanwhile, there are people like the young brother I told you who was homeless out on the street. We're not reaching that person. And you have this proliferation of ideas and concepts that have no place in organized religion, that have no place in our particular religious pedagogy. It has no place in our religious dogma, but now it now has precedence. We now find ourselves in situations where we have to talk about things and, in some regard, come to consensus and agreement about these things, many of which we don't believe. So the question is, brothers and sisters, we go to the masjid on Friday, or you go to the synagogue on Friday, or you go to church on Saturday. Are we literally, I want to say, doing something that's perfunctory, doing just the routine? Or are we really, really going and praying and establishing a religious identity that people can, if not engage with, at least acknowledge? At least acknowledge. If you look on television these days, you'll find that television is less and less and less and less and less about what? Religious identity. People have been very successful in some regards of removing race or the idea of race oppression, or even the words critical race theory, or even the words, yes, let's say it, white privilege. They've been able to remove that. But the thing that they never had to put on television in the first place is somehow an acknowledgement of religious awareness, religious presence, and in some regards, as we look around the world and how things, religious jurisprudence. The other law beyond the law. Let's bring in Sister Satana. Sister Satana, what do you even think? I've been on a rant. What have you been thinking about this? And I'm bringing in Sister Satana because she does work in that space. What do you think about that, Sister Satana?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, there is, a huge dilemma in faith-based. I think also, and I kind of had this conversation today, I don't see a succession plan in a lot of faith-based organizations.
Wow.
So
I like that.
um,
Continue with that one.
you don't see that. I think that there is, you don't see a succession plan. You don't see the next generation
Mm-hmm.
as we did, in the same volume as our parents or our grandparents who
Right.
attended faith-based organizations. So a lot of the information, the um, like you said, even the religiosity of that religion is not passed down. And so then, we try and get all these buildings and, but I'm like, what's the plan for like 10 years? Like once this generation, like what's the plan? Right. So that's a situation that I grapple with. Um, because and you saw less of it during the pandemic, right? You saw a lot because we weren't doing any outreach to that generation. So of course they're not going to um be included or be, feel that they're engaged.
Because we did two Ramadans during the
We did
pandemic.
two Ramadans.
We had
Yeah.
two Ramadans in the middle of the pandemic. I'm like,
Yeah.
I guess,
Hmm.
and don't get me wrong, the outreach to communities, food, clothing, all that's
Hmm.
important. But we don't have the representation. Like, there's nobody. I'd like to say, there's nobody in the middle of the street with the newspaper up.
Right.
That's
Right.
become passe
Yeah.
to actually have physical communication where you have that conversation. I'm not saying fishing like the ONI or anything like that, but it was a different type of interaction when you would talk to people. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone, one of the things I ran into, and some people talked about this when we had the pandemic, cook-offs became virtual cook-offs. And I
Yeah.
have to tell
Still are.
you,
Still
I was
are.
one of the worst. I was one of the worst watching the virtual cook-off because I didn't feel like I was in a room with other people. That it was like watching television, really bad TV. I'm watching bad TV.
Yeah.
Camera's bad. There's no internet. There's no production value in a lot of cases. Like, all right, click, let's go. And I'm putting that to the side. But what I'm saying is that there was something that was lost in transmission a lot of times.
Mm. Sure.
If
Sure.
people understand from a believer point of view, if you will, to get when I was a kid to get to church on Sunday was a major milestone, and as
Mm.
an adult, to get to Juma on Friday is a major milestone. Not
Yeah.
anything you regard it lightly. Like the homeless brother I told you about, he said wherever it is, that on Sunday he managed to get to church somewhere. And I'm
Hmm.
like, this level of dedication that the guy is telling me, he's like, and he's giving him his reasons. I'm like, because his understanding of faith is much more nuanced than what I'm even thinking about. What he's saying, his words that are coming out of his mouth don't really match the light right now. What this guy is saying about what's important. And you're talking
Mm.
about no succession plan. Are we even teaching our youth faith? That's my question.
Are we scared to?
We teach them a religion, but are we teaching them the value of faith?
Yeah. And even are we scared to? Are we scared that they were going to lose them if we teach them faith?
Ooh.
You
You
know?
gotta say that again. As
Yeah.
a word, as I say, you gotta say that for the gram. You need to say that again. Are we afraid? Say that.
Are
How'd you
we
say?
afraid? Are we afraid to teach them because we think that we're going to lose them, like they're not going to be interested, and so we try to appease them, and I've seen it too. I've seen it, and I'm like, we're the adults in the situation, and so then teach them what is right, right? Not if you think that okay, you're gonna. Oh, I'm just happy they're here. They're here in the masjid, mosque, synagogue, church. I'm just glad that they're here, but you're still not teaching them what is correct in your faith based, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with my dad a couple, I don't know, bunch of months ago. We were talking about religion, and he was like, he's not saying, "Hey, I grew up super religious. My grandmother and my aunt they went to church." But he said there was always an understanding of faith, whereby you will be based against that. Even if you didn't go to church or anything, your actions had a barometer by which you will be judged.
Sure.
And the barometer was so strong,
Mm-hmm.
it was your mother's faith or your aunt's faith that was so strong that it made you not want to do certain things.
Right.
It made you not to want to be caught up in certain situations and things like that.
Mm-hmm. You didn't want to disappoint your family. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge. It was real huge. Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't want to tax. You didn't want to tax mama's faith. How about that?
Yeah.
You didn't want to tax mama's faith. I think one of
Right.
the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching things is dealing with a mom and father too, but a mom that's really, really religious, and something happens to the child, particularly when they go to prison. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen people. It's almost like years come off their life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like both ways. The person that went to prison and the person that came out go through a symbiotic thing whereby their faith is duly taxed, double taxed, triple taxed, because this is not where they thought faith would lead them. So I like that idea about. I hope you. I guess we got to talk about it again. Just that idea that people are afraid to teach their children faith because they're worried they're going to lose.
Yeah. We have a couple of comments, so I'm going to go ahead and put them up here. Mama Mary says the moral right and the Tea Party are now in Congress.
And now they're not moral. They're the immoral wrong.
Right.
He's correct.
So Brother Johnny says red state Christians, Republicans don't preach the teachings of Christ. Instead, they teach complex dynamics that make up the relationship between politics and the evangelical Republican world.
And he said that to me. He clarified that. Here's the deal. In red states, what he's saying is they teach an evangelistic statement or precedent that supports that state. You know what I mean? This is the type of religiosity that we're doing over here. Because it becomes insulated, and after time, it becomes normal. It's like somebody who misquotes the Quran all the time. Okay? What happens after a while, they'll get around a group of people and they're still misquoting the Quran, but people will listen because it's the amount or the quality of Quran that's been referred to in the first place. Right? Not that it was correct, but it's just so much of it. Something must be correct in it. JT, thank you for that statement.
Yeah, thank you. Sister Naima has a few comments. One thing to be considered, some people do things now only to be seen, not to affect change. Everything is always recorded for someone else to see and judge. People want to always show other people how kind they are and are instead of just being kind behind closed doors, right? That's the difference between genuine and fake. We've gotten so far from kindness without conditions. So yeah, for sure.
Well stated.
Like you said, they're doing it for the gram, right? They want the like.
Yeah,
it's interesting because they've actually shown a couple of people who may have were doing it for the gram and they left their cameras on, and then it was like, oh wow, this is what they really thought. So they really weren't being genuine about their posts, but and then they were kind of found out, right? So
but that's true. Like sometimes I want to go somewhere and just do some good work, like everyone else. And I don't want pictures taken. I don't want that guy's lifting boxes. Let me just lift boxes. I think all the sisters that used to cook food, they just cook food. That's it. It was there. No other conversation other than thank you and I appreciate you.
Yeah. So Sister Naima continues and says a lot of times the younger generation doesn't see how religion understands or supports them. Very good point. The older Muslims don't bring the younger ones. Um, the younger ones do. True,
This is
because
true.
I think there's not a connection. You know. Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to see
mm,
you want to see a Muslim that's 70 years old, that's nice, but they can't relate necessarily to what you're doing when you're 15, 16, or
right.
18, or your
Mm,
music. And sometimes they don't know what your challenges are. This is no knock on them, but this is just the aspect of
hmm
the generational gap that happens in religious
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you have a lot, and this is across all religions, where you have
yeah,
grandma and grandpa bringing the grandkids, and so there's a generation that's lost, right?
or
You
raising the
know,
grandkids. Yeah,
right?
you're
Well, raising the
100%.
grandkids as well. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. All
So
right, is that
okay,
our last comment? I know we're over.
that is it. That's our comment. So thank you everyone for the
Yes,
comments,
everybody's
and I'm
it's
gonna
9.
drop out.
Mama Son. Thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up, brothers and sisters. Listen, this has been a great show. I appreciate your input. As we said, coming back on here, we're trying to get into some topics that mean something, have some weight as well. We're gonna get into some topics that's just fun because we gotta have fun everywhere once in a while, particularly in this life and this existence. Gotta smile. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your comments. We're going to go ahead and get to our sponsors. First up, we want to give a shout out to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You know what it is. Call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. I want to give a shout out to my cousin Jamie K. Samuels and her husband, um, Kendrick Samuels. 15 years of marriage, brothers. This is 15 years of marriage. There you go. There you go. In Islam, they say Allah likes odd numbers, so you should quit and don't do it anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Try and get 17. That's what I'm saying. So listen, check out that BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. I gave you the numbers at the bottom of the screen as well. If you're interested in getting a quality graduate level, doctoral level Islamic education, you got to check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School. That I believe they're still taking applications for the spring semester. You don't want to miss out, brothers and sisters. I told you about being in a program. I have absolutely no regrets for getting my master's degree in Islamic education because you know what? Allah knows best, and it lined me up with things I'm doing, working with youth, trying to do advocacy, and of course, educational consulting. So Allah knows best. Now, if you want to get that information, go to bayanonline.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org. Check them out. That's our show for today. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shout out, Chew. I'm out. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say, I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcasts at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out.